The right to resist of a people is like the equivalent of the right of a state to defend itself. Mm-hmm. The state has the right to self-defense, a people have the right to resist.
Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories and author of the critically acclaimed book Palestinian Refugees and International Law. You have been a leading voice in highlighting human rights violations in Palestine. You draw attention to what you describe as a genocide in Gaza, sparking both support and controversy. You've been called an anti-Semitic. There's the example of the UN ambassador from the US, Linda Thomas-Greenfield. She accused you of being anti-Semitic. How do you respond to these allegations?
Anti-Semitism, so first of all, let me say, anti-Semitism still exists. Yeah. Anti-Semitism has become a technique to deflect criticism against Israel. Mm-hmm. And it has been used more and more openly and shamelessly by political leaders in the past 10, 15 years. Yeah. So am I surprised that people accuse so many, including myself, of anti-Semitism? No, also I do not expect to be thrown confetti at by the US administration because I accuse them of being complicit with the genocide. They have enabled and they have weaponized the genocide of the Palestinian people.
The title of your latest report from last year, October, is Genocide as Colonial Erasure. What do you mean by this?
Back in March, I said Israel is not denying the crimes it's committing, is justifying it as in compliance with international law. It's using jargon from international law like evacuation orders, humanitarian zones, safe zones, but it's violating the principle of distinction, precaution, and military necessity. And
you call that humanitarian camouflage? Right?
Yes, I call it humanitarian camouflage. The plan is to take the land without the people, which is the hallmark of colonialism, and it implies the erasure of the Palestinian people as physical presence, as an identity, as belonging to the land. I noted after March 2024, the patterns of massacres increased. There were, I think I reported between 90 and 116 massacres. And again, so not only the genocide had not subsided, it had intensified. In certain parts of Gaza, like in the north, there is nothing left. 93% of the civilian infrastructure has been destroyed. How will it accommodate the population to return? Mm-hmm. But this is why I call it colonial erasure. This is not an incident on its own. Look, there is no question that the casus belli was ignited by October 7 and the attack that Israel suffered. It was brutal, no question about that, and it involved crimes. Every attack against a civilian is a crime, so no question about that. Did it justify the response that Israel gave? No. And so for many, the Palestinians are to blame because they are responsible for October 7. But in fact, the history didn't start on October 7th. So this was the situation in Gaza. Gaza had been forgotten, but only people who didn't know and who continue not to know what Gaza was can believe the fairy tale that all started on October 7. A few days after the start of the assault in Gaza, I said, the international community should remind what Israel does when it has the opportunity, as it was in 1947-49 and in 1967. It displaces masses of Palestinians and destroys large amounts of civilian infrastructures and homes so the Palestinians cannot return. Mm-hmm. This is what Israel does, and this is what Israel has been doing, because this is part of the larger plan of taking the land of the Palestinians.
Often people would say, but then according to you, does Israel has the right to exist?
Israel exists. There is not such a thing in international law like the right of a state to exist. There is the principle of sovereignty, hence, when a state exists, is protected. Does Israel exist? Yes. Does Israel have the right to be protected and to protect itself as a member of the United Nations? Yes, of course. I'm not questioning this. Does Israel have the right to be an apartheid state? No. Does Israel have the right to occupy the occupied Palestinian territory? No. Does Israel, can Israel claim self-defense on the occupied Palestinian territory? No.
And do you believe that the Palestinians have the right to resist, to fight this occupation with arms?
International law recognizes the right of people under occupation and foreign domination and oppression to resist, including through armed force.
I think this is a very important point.
It's international law.
Yeah.
I know that it makes people uncomfortable, but this is the beauty of international law, that it's pretty objective and neutral. The right to resist of a people is like the equivalent of the right of a state to defend itself. The state has the right to self-defense, a people have the right to resist. And it's a manifestation of the right of self-determination. Yeah. When the right of self-determination is squashed, the people have the right, which is the case, which has been the case for decades. The people can resort to the right to resist.
But why do you think the West governments are so reluctant to acknowledge your findings, to take concrete measures? Do you have specific examples of these inconsistencies concerning Gaza, Palestine?
Where shall I start?
Yeah.
Look, Ursula von der Leyen.
Ursula von der Leyen, okay.
She has made double standards a reality in Europe. She has tied Europe to double standards. I mean, look at what she said of the curtailing of electricity and heating and other essential services in Ukraine, and what she has done what she has said in Gaza. Has she even spoken out Gaza in recent months? I've not heard anything. I mean, double standards have become extremely evident since the Ukrainian war. The war that Russia started against Ukraine was unlawful, no question about that. And in a matter of days, in the international community, Western countries rediscover the ABC of international law. And what you do, what a state does when there is a serious infringement of international law, serious breaches of international law, human rights or international humanitarian law, when there is an aggression, basically they embrace the boycott, divest and sanctions. So sanctions was the first response, but also there was a heavy boycotting of Russia, to a point of also boycotting individuals and culture, which is pretty extreme. Yeah. However, you have Western countries trading with Israel, transferring, apart from weapons, but maintaining healthy commercial relations with Israel. Europe is the most important commercial partner of Israel. And trade should have been stopped after the ICJ provisional measures in 2024, 26th of January, because there was a plausible risk of genocide, and no, everything has continued. For many, taking a stand against Israel means taking a stand against the US. And now we are going to see this more and more. I can already see countries freaking out because they don't want to, they don't want to upset the United States. There are a number of countries who have been more outspoken. Look at Norway, more outspoken in principles. Norway, Spain, Ireland, Belgium, Luxembourg,
Norway.
Slovenia. Yeah, Norway. That's it in Europe. The rest is But yeah, there will be political consideration. So I do think that part of it is the fact that Europe is as weak as ever, and as isolated as ever. So they have to choose who are their allies moving forward. And so far they've chosen to stick to the United States. So this is part of it.
Yeah.
Second is there is this fear of being called out as an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
People are cowards. I mean, you would think that courage were not a rare commodity as it is. It is rare commodity.
And how about the Netherlands and the rest of Europe?
The responsibilities that the Netherlands have, like other European countries, concern their lack of action to protect the right of self-determination of the Palestinians, to implement in their international obligations, to seize the recognition of internationally wrongful acts as the occupation and their consequences as legal. They keep on trading with Israel, and they should stop.
If we look at the international law point, in the Netherlands we have the ICC, the ICJ, we're hosting it. Does that give us more responsibility?
I would have expected a stronger voice from the Dutch government in defense of international institutions advancing justice. I mean, as the seat of the ICJ and the ICC, I would have expected greater protection. And I do see a certain relaxation of the sense of how binding international law is, which is contributing to erode the international law-based order.
Yeah, there's also the example of Poland, who said that they will not execute the arrest warrant for Netanyahu when he might visit Poland. What precedent does this set for international law, for global justice?
It cements these double standards, and it weakens dramatically the effectiveness of the international legal system, which is premised upon universality. It's either equal to all, or the weak and the strong, the rich and the poor, or it doesn't work.
The ceasefire deal is now in act, has come into effect, and slowly aid has been coming into Gaza. However, UNRWA, the UN aid agency, has been banned by Israel, which completely hinders the efficient delivery of aid. What, according to you, should the UN response be to this?
The UN response should have been bold, hands off UNRWA. The response should have been significant, should have been emblematic, should have been a signal that a red line had been passed and irredeemably, and therefore no more tolerance of Israel's impunity. I understand that the UN itself has been weakened by the past 15 months of pressure, threats, attacks. Israel should at least have been deprived of voting rights. Now it's going to be much more difficult, because with this US administration, you imagine the reaction again. I mean,
you mean with Trump into power?
With Trump into power, Trump might well further destabilize the UN. I mean, the fear is that the US will withdraw from the UN completely. I don't think that the US is that blind.
There's a risk of genocide unfolding in the West Bank and East Jerusalem.
Yes, in October last year, when I presented the report on genocide as colonial erasure to the General Assembly, I said that I could see already patterns of violence that was experienced by Palestinians in Gaza being replicated in the West Bank. the number of people killed, now it has exceeded 850 since October 7. In the West Bank alone, the thousands of Palestinians arrested and detained and even tortured. So very similar. The destruction of civilian infrastructure and especially hospitals and livelihoods. Why this fury against the West Bank? And by the way, the leaders, because the Israeli leaders say more than they should. They put things on record that are extremely incriminating. When they say, well, we are going to do what we have done to Gaza, we are going to replicate it in the West Bank. And this is something that Gallant himself has been saying for months when he was still the Minister of Defense. They have often referred to the West Bank or Northern West Bank as mini Gaza. And now, and immediately after the ceasefire, they escalated the violence against the West Bank. Why? Why? There is, again, how are the Palestinians supposed to live while there have been constant attacks by soldiers and settlers throughout the year? Now this heavy bombing.
Yeah.
And it's brutal.
What needs to happen now?
What should happen is end of the genocide, meaning of the intent to destroy the Palestinian people as such, which I see clearly. End of the genocide, end of the occupation. There is no reason, no legal justification for Israel to continue its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory. And the international community must follow suit.
NTR. Speciaal voor iedereen.